welcome to my DVD on the Torre attack. And now if you're wondering why is there a lumberjack sitting in front of me rather than a grandmaster, I am actually a grandmaster. I'm just a bit more hairy than I was some of my previous DVDs. And well, this DVD is going to take you through a very interesting opening, a very interesting and easy to play opening, the Torre attack. Now, my reason for doing an opening on the Torre attack is because I've been dabbling with other openings recently, like the London system. And I found that the Torre attack is really, I would say, the little brother of the London system. And when you're developing as a chess player, I'll just tell you a little bit story how I became a grandmaster, because I think it's quite relevant to this DVD. I started by playing the English opening with c4, and this was what I played for a long period of my life, the English opening. And then I thought, I got me to international master level, and I thought to develop as a player, I'm going to have to learn other openings. So I then started to learn d4. So why did I go from c4 to d4? Well, the reason was when you're trying to learn openings, it makes a lot of sense to develop with what you already know. So, for example, the positions you get with d4 are very similar to those ones you get with the English opening c4. So you try to just expand little by little, but by keeping with what you know. This is a great way to improve your openings and your middle game style and your chess in general, and this helped me to get to Grandmaster. But then as I got older, the amount of theory I had to learn with some particular lines with d4, so the main line, King's Indian Defence, for example, these sharp lines where you have to, in order to get an advantage, know maybe 20, 30 moves of theory, and if you forget one move, you could get completely crushed. I thought, this is not for me. I'm not going to spend my whole life learning these things. I've got trees to chop with my lumberjack top on. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, let's have a look at what a lot of other players do who may be in a similar situation to me. And a good friend of mine, Grandmaster Mark Hedman, has always been a great fan of, after knight to f6 in these positions, playing a lot quieter kind of ways of playing. So, example, he plays the Barry with knight c3. We're not going to be looking at that. And the reason I did this London system DVD, which you might be aware of, with bishop f4 is, I came to the conclusion that the positions you get from this are still very similar to what I already know, being an English and d4 player, so I don't have to learn as much. But I also found that with bishop to f4, I'm avoiding a lot of theory, so it's a lot simpler to learn. And it's going to really make my opponent much more uncomfortable because he won't get the openings he wants to know. So these are all benefits. But the main thing is the setups are very, you can just know the setups. You don't have to memorize particular moves. As long as you know the setups with the London system with this, then you will understand how you should play the opening. So what does this have to do with the Torre? Well, I then thought, the Torre. And the Torre is really where you play knight to f3 and then bishop to g5 next move. The Torre, in my opinion, is extremely closely related to the London system. A lot of positions you get are very similar, but it has extra spice and extra kick in some lines. And like anything, it is maybe less effective against some other positions as well. So when is the Torre really effective? Well, we start with knight to f3. This is a move which I'd suggest you play and start with. And the idea of this is, first of all, you avoid a lot of the really sharp lines like the Benko. Because if c5 is played, well, you can try to keep it very solid with c3, or you can play d5. So now the Benko is less effective with b5. We'll come to that later on. But also now you're keeping things flexible. What should black do after this move, knight to f3? Well, we were talking about the King's Indian Defence, so let's first of all mention that one. If black now plays g6 in this position, rather than going for these main complicated lines with c4, the Torre attack, and the main move in the Torre attack is bishop to g5. So I'd say this is stage one of the Torre attack. You go d4, knight to f3, bishop to g5. This is the start of the Torre attack. And by playing this setup, you can pretty much play similar-ish plans against whatever black does. So that's a major advantage. I've always hated playing against the King's Indian defense with c4 straight away because you get attacked. With the Torre attack, you don't get attacked. You play in the style, you dictate the game. You don't allow black to get these attacking opportunities. So already we're seeing some advantages. It's simpler to play, easier to learn. Black doesn't get the attacking opportunities. Black also may not be so well prepared for bishop g5. I mean, lower down, I mean, even up to 2000 elo, I would say that black, if black is a King's Indian defense player, may not know what to do against bishop g5. Already a big advantage. You're going to have more experience than your opponent. And, well, let's just develop with the King's Indian attack first, just in this introduction to the DVD, because I'm going to show you what your basic things and your basic setups are here. Basically an overview of the whole DVD before we go into a lot more detail. And against the King's Indian attack, well, naturally, bishop g7 is the main move. And here, the move we're going to be concentrating on is knight bd2. And this is your typical Torre follow-up. Now, the idea of this move is in some positions you want to play e4. And in other positions you keep your c-pawn free, so you don't put your knight on c3. And you want to play c3. And if you remember the London system, or you know, I really do recommend you buy a DVD on the London system. I would say that anyway, a bit of extra moolah, but it helps us all. You will know that the main thing in the London system where you put your pawns is c3 and e3. So you make this pyramid. And this is exactly what you do in the Torre. But having your bishop on g5 rather than f4 in the London system does make things quite significantly different. Now, let's just have a look at a couple more moves here. Well, black now castles kingside, going for the King's Indian. We'll just have a look at this first. And here the correct move to play is c3. Now, if you go e4 straight away, black has a very good strike against this move. Pawn to d5, grabbing space in the centre of the board. And this works tactically well for black, because the move you'd quite like to play here is e5, gaining space. But now black can go knight to e4. And I try to make this work, but the computer confirms black is absolutely fine here in this position. So we're not going to be doing this straight away. So move order, as always, is incredibly important. But this is the same with any opening. And one bit of advice I give you during the course of this DVD, and when you go and have the, shall we say, the braveness to play this opening, just, you know, when you start playing it, be very aware of the move orders. And we'll look at typical ideas in the next segment of this DVD. But c3 is a good idea because you're waiting to see what black sets up with. And now black has a decision to make. Does black go d6 or does black go d5? Black has to play one of these moves at some moment. Of course, c5 is another option, but at some point that d-pawn is going to have to move. Now, if you're playing against Grunfeld players, d5 is a possibility you're most likely to face. But yet again, this is one of the reasons I like the Torre, because when black plays d5, and chess is a constant battle about your own ideas and your opponent's ideas. And I've always said, to become better at chess, and not many people talk about this, you need to do two things. You need to, of course, do your own plans and to know what you're doing, but you also need to rebut and try to stop your opponent's plans, make your opponent uncomfortable. And the Torre is a perfect opening to do that second thing. Because when black plays d5, in a Grunfeld, and very quickly, we can have a look at that, the Grunfeld kind of thing, in the main line, and we can see the advantages of the Torre over the Grunfeld. In the Grunfeld, when he plays d5, he often gets a very tactical and sharp position, because this is already threatening some exchanges here in the centre. And when you take on d5 and play the main line with e4, we get these very sharp positions where black has something to bite on, the d4 pawn. And this is black's Grunfeld idea. But the way we're going to play it, and let's just go through the move order that we're picking, is that black doesn't have this same kind of play. Because if black does play this d5 move, the difference is what's the d5 pawn doing? Well, it's not really doing anything aggressive. It's just getting space in the center. So black has to think differently to what he normally is thinking. So we've got him out his comfort zone. We are doing the second thing, restraining our opponent's ideas. So we've already got that psychological advantage. And against this move, well, throughout the DVD, I mean, we'll go into more detail on this. What I'm generally going to try to do, because I think this is a good way to, do anything, I'm going to try to give you two sort of ways you can play. I'm going to give you one very aggressive way you can play with white, often combining my good friend Harry running up the board. But I'm also going to give you a solid way to play. So you've got two opportunities, two ways to play. And, well, against d5 here, e3. And this completes our pyramid. It allows our bishop on f1 to develop. Now black can go c5 in certain positions. Against this, I'm going to give you two main plans. We'll come into this in the typical plan section. But just to let you know, one plan is a very aggressive h4, h5. Another plan combines you playing on the queen side with queen b1 and b4. But again, let's say that for later on. So now black can either go c5, or he can try to play e5. If he tries to play e5, then we go bishop d3, and we meet e5 with e4. And again, the position gets very sharp, but we get some very good attacking opportunities here. But already, I think this is great. This is a great way to play. So we've got black out of his comfort zone. Black is not going to be used to this way of playing when employing this setup with knight f6. Okay, well, let's just stick with the King's Indian kind of setup. Now, another thing I should mention is that, of course, black doesn't have to play d5. Black can also play d6 here. And this is the kind of move that you're most likely to face if you're playing a King's Indian defense player. This opening that I personally hate playing against in the main line, because black often gets attacking opportunities. But in this line, because we've got a pawn on c3, and this is one of the main ideas we're going to see throughout this this DVD. It supports our pawn on d4, giving us a much stronger hold on the centre. In the main line King's Indian, if you can just picture this c pawn being on c4, that gives white extra space, but it leaves the d pawn a bit weaker, and black often has tactical opportunities to attack that pawn, but he doesn't have those tactical opportunities here. So now, our main setup here, we're going to play e4 now. And you should note that d5 is not going to be as effective now because black's wasted a tempo playing d6. And the setup we're going to look at now, really black has to aim for something with c5, otherwise we get a very comfortable game. Otherwise, we're going to go bishop d3, queen e2, and e5 at the right moment. And c5's our main sort of move we're looking at, and here we're going to simply take and go bishop c4, and we're going to aim to get an advantage from this position. And I'm just going to keep things very simple for now. This is our setup against the King's Indian defense. When else is the Torre attack very effective? Well, after knight c3. The other time it's extremely effective is against e6. So if you're playing someone who's a Nimzo Indian player, or a Queen's Indian player, should we say, who prefers to try this setup, which is seen very regularly at top international level now. Bishop g5 is very effective again. And I'd say throughout this DVD, the two most times I would recommend the Torre is against the Nimzo Indian and the King's Indian defense setups, which are very popular in main games. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not going to lie to you in this DVD. It's not, in my opinion, as effective against d5. You can still play it. Kramnik, as we're going to see, is a main exponent of playing knight to f3 and ideas of bishop g5. But it is, in my opinion, the Torre attack, a great weapon to have, which you can add to your arsenal, especially if you've got the London system DVD. It's much more effective against the King's Indian and the Nimzo Indian. And here, let's just have a look what we're going to do against this e6 move. Well, bishop g5 again. And compared to the London system proper, when you put the bishop on f4, the bishop on g5 creates a pin. The bishop on g5 is pinning the knight. It is putting a little bit of pressure on that knight. So it's actually a more active square than we get in the London system. And that's why I started this kind of this introduction saying how these things are related. So I recommend, if you want to, advance as a player, that you can start looking at this London system setup as well, because they all link in. But also, I'm trying to give you, the whole aim of this DVD, I'm trying to give you a very simple yet effective way to play. I don't want you to memorize too many variations. I find this annoying, and if you're like me and you don't have a lot of time to remember variations, I want to concentrate on the ideas. The ideas I'm trying to get across to you in this video. I want you to remember the ideas, not the particular moves, but what you're trying to achieve. And if you stick with these ideas, it's much more important than remembering moves. And for lazy players with little time, it's much more effective to become a strong player like this. This opening is perfect for you players like myself, who want to keep things simple but have a lot of bite to the moves as well. Now let's have a look. Okay, so after bishop g5, what can black play here? Well, black has a couple of main setups. d5 is now one way that black can play. Very, very popular at club level, so we will be concentrating on that move. h6 is a useful move, and c5 is another setup that you're going to regularly meet. Often b6 will transpose to these variations. I mean, this is a move that black will want to play when playing the Nimzo, but at some point black will have to play something like c5 or d5. d5 not being as effective now because it will block the bishop on b7. But our setup's nearly always the same. We go c3, and after bishop here, we go knight here, and at some point something like here is going to have to be played. Well, we actually have another strong move in this, if in some positions here. For example, if black now plays c5, there's an annoying move here, which we'll come to, and it's actually a d5 move in some positions. More effective when, let's say, after b6, we go e3 first. And this is one thing you're going to always have to think about in these positions. Do you go e3 or do you go c3 first? And generally it doesn't make a lot of difference, but after b6, in actual fact, e3 is stronger because we keep the knight for the c3 square. And after c5, we can go d5. And you can see a very subtle difference now with these two pawns. If black takes, we have knight c3. So again, it's just those little move order things you've got to constantly think about. But, this is a very tricky little line, and we'll have a look at this a bit later on. But what are our main ideas with this bishop g5 stuff? Well, let's have a look at some sort of setups and what this DVD is going to look at. And we're going to start this DVD by looking at the Nimzo and what we should do. So obviously there's going to be more theory there. But let's say after c5, immediately, the basic setup is with e3, c3. So we're going to concentrate on this for a little bit. I'm going to give you another very aggressive option, which I like. Another thing I found when I told people I'm going to do a DVD on the Torre attack, they say the Torre attack, isn't it just a really boring opening? Why is it called the attack? I'm like, well, wait and see. I will prove to you it is an attack. And there's a lot of lines, even though it's got quite a boring reputation, totally unfounded. You can play it in a lot of different ways, and you can attack with this opening. For example, c5 is a very regular move, and now d5 is a very rare move, but it actually gives some very dangerous positions. It's a little pawn sack line, and the point is here, again, if black takes, we're aiming to go e3 and knight c3, and just to take this pawn back. So this is one tactical idea. But the kind of main structures we're going to be considering involve the move e3, and now let's just say both sides develop normally. So bishop e7, and now we're going to develop knight bd2, and again black really has to either decide between playing b6 or d5 here. Now b6 is a better move order than I just showed you a couple of moves ago, because we've already put our knight on d2, meaning that any ideas with d5, they just don't work. And also now that the knight's not pinned anymore. So our main Torre setup is this pyramid, c3, and after bishop b7, bishop d3, and now, well, this again is a main type of position. Let's say black castles. We are now, one of the main lines is castling, and we often get this kind of pawn structure. C takes is another move we will take a look at, and here If black plays d5, one of the main ideas is knight e5, followed up by f4, and also our queen can come around to h3 with an attack. We go for the attack here. And if d6 here, a move which I'm advocating in this DVD, a move which is not the most popular move, but a very interesting move, is bishop takes f6. Why? Because I want to stop a knight being able to recapture there. And after bishop takes f6, we're going to go for a battery on this diagonal towards h7. But again, in the next part, the typical ideas stuff, I will talk about this in more depth. I basically want to put the bishop on c2, the queen on d3, and start an attack against h7. So it's a very simple and dangerous idea. So we're just sort of saying, and the first part of the DVD, I will be looking at the Nimzo and the various things that you're going to encounter when playing against the Nimzo. I mean, of course, there's lots of different ways that black can set up, and there's going to be lots of little things you need to know when you're doing your attack, your Torre attack. But we will take a look at them, and in the next section we're going to, I think, we'll explain them in more depth. But really, this DVD, the first part, we're going to be having a look at all Nimzo setups, which include e6. I'm even going to really say that the Nimzo setups with d5, you know, is kind of Nimzo-ish because it's quite popular. But just to show you what we're going to do against this d5 move, well, again, we do our similar setup. We go for our triangle. Knight b2 is a very important move order, because if you play c3 now, black has queen b6. And again, this is something, if you know the London system, you might well be aware of. And this is very annoying to meet this one. So as a little rule, whenever black is threatening queen b6 in these d5 lines, you should play knight b d2 first, because queen b6 is now a lot less effective, because you can simply meet this move with rook b1. Which move is more useful, queen b6 or rook b1? Well, actually rook b1, I would say, because one of the advantages compared to the London system is our bishop is on g5, so we're already threatening to do some damage to the knight. And you can even, after queen b6, just take the knight immediately as well. This is another way you can play. So that's a little thing move order wise to bear in mind. But if we have the standard setup with these kind of things being played, so knight c6, c3, h6, no point giving up the pin, so let's just drop the bishop back. And now what kind of things do we play here? Well, again, this is our standard setup position. One thing I would like to mention, with the bishop on d6, knight to e5 is not a main move. But with the bishop on e7, so let's just have a look what happens with the bishop on e7. e5 is not covered as much anymore. So in these positions, the key move that we're going to take some time to look at is the move knight to e5. And again, this is something we'll look at in the next chapter. But this is a really key idea in the Torre attack. A bit like the London system, but our bishop is more aggressively placed. And in the London system, the bishop is on f4. So why might the Torre be an advantage over the London system? Well, we now have the idea of playing f4. So, for example, bishop b7, f4 is a move we can often play, gaining space, even getting ready to swing a rook around to join in the attack in some situations. With a bishop on d6, not as effective, but we can still get some very aggressive positions. Okay, so, I mean, that's kind of a very quick overview, but another thing I would like to say is, against d5 and move 1, let's say we go knight to f3 here. Well, the Torre attack is not as effective, and you have to be a little bit careful here. For example, if e6 in this position, bishop g5 is playable. E6 is quite a rare move, by the way, but I think black is going to get a very equal position with bishop e7. You're making a lot of exchanges. You can still play like this, but what I would recommend, and this is where I'm saying that these openings can fit in, and this is how you grow as a chess player anyway. You have to adapt, you have to improve, you have to think of new things. A very effective move now, in my experience, would be bishop f4. When you're going for a London system, and you're going for one of the better lines, in my opinion, in the London system, the black bishop cannot come outside that pawn. and you can see that now these openings kind of link in. What other things do we have to be aware of? Well, after knight to f6, knight to f3, we've kind of had a look at g6, e6. We talked about c5. If black now goes d5 here, well, again, I'd be very tempted to play bishop f4 here. Bishop to g5 is the so-called Tartakova variation, and it is a move which Kramnik plays. I think white can still aim for advantage here, but it's maybe not as effective as a Torre opening as when you're playing against the King's Indian and the Nimzo. Again, why is it not as effective? Well, because when black plays this system, his next couple of moves are going to be quite straightforward. Unless he goes e6. E6 we're back into our normal thing, but there's one move here which is a bit annoying, knight to e4. And your best chance of getting an edge here is bishop to h4, and you can still play like this. And again, we'll look at this a bit later on. But really, to sum up, the Torre, you can play against everything, but it's, in my opinion, much more effective against the Nimzo Indian, to get black out of his particular variations, and also against the Grunfeld and the King's Indian. And it can be a great weapon for our repertoire, and it can fit into the London system very well. As we're going to see, it has a lot of dangerous bites. So the DVD to start with, Nimzo, then we're going to have a look at the King's Indian stuff. We're going to have a look at d5 things throughout, where black plays d5, and we'll have a look at other options at the end of the DVD. Of course, other options do include things where black plays a quick h6 and g5. So a lot to look at here. I hope you enjoy the DVD. I'll try to make it as fun and cheerful as I can while trying to actually teach you something at the same time. I'm not going to try to get you to memorize too many lines unless you need to. The whole point of picking an opening like the Torre or the London or the Collie is that we're trying to avoid learning long variations from memory. Instead, we're trying to play very easily, and we're trying to play basically ideas which we can just remember the ideas. We don't have to remember the moves, the ideas. So now let's have a look at the main ideas, I would say, and the main sort of themes you need to bear in mind throughout the course of this DVD.